So when it comes to magic, I think we all know how to make a coin disappear. We just like pretend like we're grabbing it and then say, oh, it's not in this hand, but really it's in this hand. I'm not going to do a stupid trick like that. Instead, we are going to do the reverse trick, which is much harder. This time I'm going to start off with no coins at all, especially not in this hand, and then just wave over it. And then you see we actually get a coin reproduced. So I'm going to teach you how to make that.
So as you probably guessed, that wasn't a real magic trick, it was all visual effects, as you should probably come to expect from this channel. If you thought that was real, I guess that's a good thing. I guess that means the effect actually looks pretty good. Here's how I made it. So I recorded myself, I guess, holding up my hand with nothing in it, so before placing the coin. This is just so I would know what the skin looks like underneath, because of course the coin was here the whole time as I did the the hand swiping thing, so it was already there. I just needed to know what the skin looked like under there, so we start like that, we place the coin, and then we're just gonna do some like stuff to remove it until this point. So pretty simple stuff. However, unfortunately, we are gonna have to do this using Blender's compositing, even though I did this in DaVinci, whatever. It's just going to be super laggy. So first thing we need to do is a bunch of tracking. So Movie Clip Editor, you just take your footage, drag it in right here, and this is how you import in footage the fast way. Two things to do immediately. Set scene frames. This is going to make it so we go from frame 1 to whatever the endpoint is. So I guess it's 678 frames. Also, frame rate, we got to match it. So this is just like standard stuff we do before tracking anything. Make sure this is set to the view transform set to standard so our colors aren't messed up. And then finally, we are going to prefetch, which is going to load the video into memory, which usually takes a sec. So again, game plan is we're going to track the coin and then like extract what the skin looks like underneath and do that whole thing. So first of all, let's find the first frame where we want to start doing this. So I think we want the actual, like what we see in the final effect, maybe to start over here as the hand comes out. So let's say frame 270. So yes, there is like footage before this, and we're actually going to use it to look at the skin, but frame 270 is where we want our effect to begin, which means we only need to track from there up to like right about here, okay? First thing we are going to do for tracking is just enable normalize. This is just going to make it so our tracker kind of stays there even if there's a couple lighting changes, so it's going to be invariant to that. I'm just going to add in a location tracker, control click, scale that up so it's taking the whole thing. So yeah, I'm going to be Alt S, by the way, to do this. This is the search area. So yes, we're going to be tracking the whole quarter, and since it's just a circle, it should be fine. So again, pattern area and here a search area just slightly bigger since there isn't much movement, and then track forwards or control T. Should track pretty quickly, especially since Blender's been given a speed upgrade. It's been sped up in a recent update for tracking, okay? So you can see we're tracking up until this point. It's pretty steady, and then once the hand crosses over, it stops tracking because, of course, the feature is hidden, but that's fine since that's pretty much when we don't need it anymore anyway. So Control L to lock this tracker in, okay? Now let's head over to the compositing workspace and start doing some visual effects. So full screen so that you don't see everything in the background, which was already there. Let me start off with a movie clip node. This is just to import literally the footage that we dealt with in the movie clip editor, which means it should be loaded in over here. There we go. So V and Alt V to zoom in and out. So Alt V, V. First thing we want to do is, you can see, again, this is why I don't like using the compositor. It takes forever to update. Like, look at this. This is only 1080p footage as well, and it's taking forever. First thing I want to do is just render a still of what the skin looks like without the coin. So find a frame like that. For me, it's 121. By the way, this footage and the blend file and all that is going to be available over at the Patreon, or you could just record your own footage on frame 121. I'm just going to render the frame as if we were to render anything. So that was F12, and then Alt-Shift-S to save. And if you don't want that shortcut, image, save as, Alt-Shift-S. And I'm going to save this as the skin still, since that's what it is. Don't need an alpha channel, okay? So now we basically have an image that we can track over this. Speaking of which, let's go to the first frame over here of our actual project, so 270 and on. And I guess I should save this as a coin magic, and all magic is fake, especially Chris Angel. Sorry for calling you out, but it's true. What were we doing? We're going to track the still onto here. So we need to import this still image that we rendered. So for me, that was on the desktop, I believe. So I'm looking for, by the way, spoiler, shaved my head. What am I looking for? I'm looking for, what did I call it? This is from the last export, skin still. Okay, perfect. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to take this and overlay it on top, alpha over, stick this right here, and since it's in the bottom socket, it's going to be in the foreground, or we could switch these, okay? So first thing we need to do now that we have this is we need to make sure, I'm making it 50% transparent so we can see, we need it to be roughly overlaid in the correct position so that when we track it, it's tracking the right area in some sense. So I'm going to shift this over on the x-axis by roughly, I guess, maybe 70. Just we're trying to align the hand of this frame to the footage on the first frame. So we do that, and then let's also go negative on the y-axis, so something like that. You can see it's not perfect. We could do a bit of scaling, rotating, whatever, but this is a good start. And to make sure that this is now tracking, we can import in our tracker information. So there's a track position node. And for the footage that we tracked, which again is this one, you just select the camera, which is the object of the don't worry about it. Basically, just look for the only tracker that you have. And this is going to output the X and Y locations of that, which of course we can hook up to the transforms X and Y, so the still is moving with it, okay? But before we do that, let's set this to relative start, or I guess relative frame. Absolute frame, one of these. Point is the tracker information, X, Y, it's going to output this X and Y data, but it's going to treat the first frame, not 270, but literally frame 1 as X and Y position 0. We're going to tell Blender, no, set 270 as the initial 0, 0, okay? Basically what this means is now we can connect X and Y, although we're going to need to add in these numbers from before, so we can just add these in. And then if we do some math addition, so this is just the initial coordinates that we're adding in. So I'm adding in 70, and then what was it? Was this 70? Yeah, that was 70, and this was minus 40. So we're going to add in minus 40, and then it's either that we need to set this to relative frame instead of absolute frame. I think that's what it was. You can see that now what we have is the tracker position, but the initial frame, which is going to be 0, 0, X and Y information, hopefully you're following, is going to have the initial value since we're adding them 70 minus 40. So as we play along here, you can see this footage, which is the whole thing, is actually moving with the pivot point or the center of this coin, okay? Perfect. Of course, we don't want this image to be everywhere, so now we can actually make a mask for this. So how do we mask out the coin and only the coin? Simple. So we add in a mask node since that's what we want, and we're going to use a mask over here. But before we do that, let's just preview the original footage. To actually add in a mask that follows the coin, because of course we don't want it hovering in space. Movie clip editor, again, the footage, and this time, since we already have the tracker information loaded in here, we can literally just switch over to mask, literally as if it's this crazy thing. We can switch over to mask, create a new mask. We're going to call this the coin mask. And for this one, shift a circle, and this is going to add in a basic circular mask that we can. Once it loads, I don't know why it's taking so long. We can just make it hover over this coin. And if we were to play this footage right now, so I have my timeline here. If we were to play this, you can see the mask is just kind of hovering in space, irrespective, or it doesn't care about the position of this. So you can just shift click the track or control P, and you're going to see in the mask window what that's going to do. I think it's going to show it. Does it not show it here? Usually it shows it, but I guess not. Point is when you hit control P with the thing, it actually tracks onto it. So again, we selected all the points, shift clicked this one, and control P as if to parent it to this one, okay? So now we have a mask that's moving with that, which means we can now load in this mask over here. This is going to be our coin mask. Make sure to enable motion blur, or it's actually not going to show anything. And then let's actually see our composite. So you can see, and let me actually get rid of this for now. You can see now we've actually erased the coin, not perfectly, but pretty well. You can almost see the circular mask if you look pretty closely. And that is going to track on at least before the hand passes over. And just to make that a bit more clear, I'm just going to add in a bit of, I don't know, a bit of color correction of some kind, hue, saturation, value, if I was to make this darker. Yeah, now you can really see that circular thing. This is just a patch of skin that we're moving around, right? And of course, we wouldn't want to add this. This is just for a visual reference. To soften this mask up a bit so it's not so obvious, right now this is the mask. You can see it's pretty intense. So dilate / erode, we set this to feather, set the feather to something like 50 or whatever. And you can see it's going to feather this out, which means that the footage, or rather the still, is only going to show up in the feathered area once we make that the factor. So you can see that softens it up quite a bit, maybe even go up to 60. Okay? So in general, even though the compositor is so slow that it makes you want to bang your head into a wall and then jump out of a window or something like that, even though that's the case, you can see that generally once this updates, we have the finished effect, except for the fact that at some point this hand is going to brush over. And what's the issue with that? The issue is when it does brush over, if I can find where that is, I guess it's more towards the end of the footage. Compositor's garbage. But you can see that when the hand's actually passing over, we have this skin that's still in the correct position, which is good, but it's actually showing up on top of this, which is not what we want. So now what we need to do is create another mask, starting wherever this hand starts passing over the patch of skin. We're going to create a second mask, and this is going to basically put the original footage back on top. Just for that area. So again, alpha over. So after this, we do another alpha over. What are we going to put over? We're going to put our footage over. And then where are we going to do that? Only on a mask that is soon to be made. So let's actually make that mask. So it's going to start on frame, I guess, 370. And I guess we can use this window for that. Again, movie clip editor, same footage, not graph, but, and this is a cool way to see XY data, by the way, not graph, but masking. What I'm going to do is going to create a new mask. This one's going to be the hand pass mask because it's the hand passing over. And then just to create a custom mask without the circle or square thing, you can just control. And so hold control and then click is going to add a mask point. And I'm dragging just to get some curvature. So click and drag tangent to where you want your mask to be. So I'm just pulling this along the finger and like this. And in fact, this is probably too many mask points, but it's fine. Control click, and then to seal this, you go to mask, you go to cyclic, and you can see that actually closes the mask. Okay. To actually have this animate, because right now it's just going to be doing that kind of thing. To add a keyframe, you're not going to see that it does anything because we need to go over to the dope sheet, which is dope, and show the mask. So here you can see we actually added in a keyframe. Go a couple frames down, select all of these, and then G to move. We don't need to be too accurate with this, especially since it's moving over pretty fast and there's motion blur. So again, I to keyframe, couple more frames, and we're just going to keep going until the coin's completely hidden. So this one's something like this. And by the way, you can move individual points if you want. I'm just moving them all together. So again, select everything, I to keyframe, couple more frames. This should probably be the last one, I. And now let's just see that the intermediary frames are okay. So I'm just going to zoom in here. Sometimes we got to interpolate the results a bit. So I'm just going to add custom keyframes in between. So here it could be a bit closer. So I, and then, okay. So you can see generally we have a mask. Again, what's this mask going to do? It's going to say put the original footage of the hand, the hand that's going over. It's going to put this on top, which means after we're done with this on the next frame, we can actually make this thing huge. And it's actually going to do what we want because after this point, we don't want the skin at all. So it's just going to take the footage everywhere because it's, including this whole thing. And it's going to put the footage on top. Okay. And that I forgot to add a keyframe for. So let's just do that one more time. Just going to move this here, and then I to keyframe. Okay. So we have this moving and then it's like that. Okay. So back in the compositing workspace, just to finish this up, this worst workflow possible, we're going to set this mask to hand pass. So again, this is going to be the mask that I guess is going to show everything here. But then before that, it's just going to move respective to this. And by the way, I guess we're getting some weird results here because of the motion blur. It's trying to interpolate. I guess if we disable that, does it still move with it? Yeah, it seems to be fine. Okay. So I'm just going to disable motion blur for this one. I'm going to use this as the factor because, again, that's where we want the hand to pass over. So on some frames, there should still be some section of the skin tag. Although you can see that we need to feather this out a bit because we're seeing the coin. So again, just like last time, we're going to add in a dilation. So let's dilate with a feather, but this time instead of feathering outwards by like 20 or whatever, we're going to feather inwards. So it's going to eat into the mask and it's going to hide that a bit better. So you can see with the mask, this is before, or now it's before and then after. So it's actually feathering into it. In this case, that's a good thing. And we can make it slightly more intense, minus 25. And let's see what that's looking like. Okay, so this is the first frame where it's active. And I guess probably makes sense to add in like a on-off switch for this. There's probably a good way to do this, but the way I like to do it is I'm going to multiply this by 1. In other words, keep the mask. If it was by 0, it's going to make the mask black everywhere. And does that update? Needs to update. Come on. Or is it 1? Whatever. Basically, we're going to keyframe this here. We're going to go backwards. We're going to set this to 0 and then add in a keyframe. So in other words, this hand mask is going to be deactivated here, and then afterwards it's going to be activated. So you can see it's actually working here. Again, if we were to set this to 0, now it should actually work. You can see the skin's actually popping up above. So that's why we have that thing. And then after this frame, it should be all-encompassing, which means when our hand passes over, we'll see in a second, the coin should be here. Yes, the coin is in here indeed. So really, all we did here, just to explain this mess of nodes, is we had our original footage. Let's go back a couple of frames. We had our original footage. We did a bunch of tracker logic. This addition is for the initial frame 270, again, relative to frame 270. We basically took a freeze frame of the skin, tracked it on top. This is what this alpha over is for, so we feathered it away with this dilator road node. Then that was fine up until this point over here where the hand had to pass over. So you can see if the hand passes over, the skin's in the way. So we added another alpha over with the original footage and then just did a second mask for that one. So that's going to get rid of that. And then, you do it a bit better. You do some masking, some feathering, some motion blur, whatever, which we did most of those things. But once you do all of that, you just render this out as a video. So in general, you just set this to FFmpeg, encoding, high quality, MP4, whatever settings you want. Just make sure the final alpha over is being delivered both to the viewer. This one doesn't matter, it's just for like what we can see, but in general, delivered to the viewer, and also the composite nodes, that's actually what's being rendered. That's what this one's for. You set it to video settings, you pick an output directory, and when we render this, it's going to give us this completed effect. So yeah, there you go. I hope that was useful for ruining your childhood dreams of being a magician. Everybody's doing it digitally now anyways. I don't know about David Blaine. I've seen a couple tricks that do not quite make sense otherwise, but that's a tangent. Anyways, if you want the blend file for this one, including the original footage, so you don't have to film yourself and you can just play around with this or try it out, etc., that's going to be available over on Patreon, including all other blends, etc. Of course, I like to say thank you to all the 580 to close to 590 some patrons now, who are weekly, monthly, daily, getting new blend files, exclusive tutorials that I do not post to either channel. Those ones I make occasionally when it's warranted and it's worth making. Discord access, early access. I'm making but this tutorial actually should be early access. So some people are seeing this earlier, stuff like that. I just need to talk long enough for the credits to roll by, so at this point it should be fine. Anyways, hope you learned something in this coin fakery tutorial, because I sure did. See ya.